Welcome back to the Weekend Ball podcast. I am Alex Adams, live here in Jakarta, Indonesia, covering the Canadian men's national basketball team at the FIBA World Cup. Canada just came off a very impressive win against Latvia 101-75. I'm joined by X.com senior writer and correspondent covering Team Canada, Scott Witter. Hey, Scott, thanks so much for coming on. And it was really fun just being around you for the first round. For people that don't know, we both follow each other around as media, and obviously Scott with his high profile kind of status at X.com. It's a bit intimidating for me. So thanks so much, Scott, for coming on.
Thanks. For anyone who didn't catch that one, we are constantly reminded at the press conference to state your name and affiliation. And Alex is the worst offender of this and
Yeah,
never
I
says his
am.
name, who he's representing. And I usually follow him with a question. And so the warning had usually just goes out targeting Alex. So I have to sit there and they loudly say my name and my affiliation, which is X.com, I guess, right?
Just so people who might not know, is just Scott obviously got his media credentials, and he said Twitter journalist. That's what he wrote in the kind of application, and FIBA
On the
accepted. So
paperwork.
it's on the paperwork. It's just part of just your daily job, man, of covering this team.
It's a brave new world out there.
And you've cared and just followed this team for so long, and we talked about it after the well, I forget which game, but basically the France game. But for you, Scott, what do you make of this game? I know I was texting you at halftime, or really in the first quarter, second quarter, being like, uh-oh. And you were pretty quietly confident that they'd come back against Latvia. And obviously they roared back in the second half and just made it a blowout, and their skill came out. And Shea was dominant. RJ played well. Kelly Olynyk, I thought, really kept them in the game. That seems to be a theme when Shea's maybe out of it, is that Kelly just continues to get a couple assists, get a couple key, shots in transition, or just, like threes, everything. And while Shea's maybe a bit quieter. But Scott, just what do you think? What are kind of your initial thoughts of this game today?
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. It was this is the game, by the way. For what I did for this, I bought tickets to this before. I kind of put in the media request as more on a whim. And I got that maybe a few weeks before the tournament began. I already purchased all my tickets. There's no really easy way to resell them. I didn't know if I wanted to sit with media or enjoy the fan experience. So this was the one game I think I had front row seats, and I was gonna throw up the flag and put on the jersey and just kind of go wild and crazy, because in the media press box, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to show any team affiliation. You're not supposed to cheer, right? So I gotta get one game where I can go have some fun. So it was tense. It was good to see them get pushed. I think when you were texting me in the first half, from my perspective, where I was, Laffy was just going nuts. Like they
Yeah.
were playing on full adrenaline. They were doing everything right. They're hitting every single shot. Their defense was amazing. They were extremely locked in. And I'm like, they can't keep this up. Like
Mm.
this is going to slow down at some point. We also now, we have this all NBA player on the team who, has now had like two slow start games against France and Latvia. And I think you and I were talking about this. We're like, is he kind of doing this on purpose? Is he trying
Yeah.
to, get his teammates going, try to find other guys, get them moving, figure out the game, knowing that he's got that fifth gear that he can kind of push into if need be, and he kind of tends to do that in the second half. I don't know. I was going to ask him that in the presser, and I didn't get around to it. But it almost feels that way, that like Shea can kind of turn it on when he wants. But he needs those other guys going.
Mhm.
And I don't know if he's trying to push that a little bit too much in the first half. But weathered the storm, and once they kind of tied it up at the end of the first half, even took a lead, you kind of felt this. We knew what
Yeah.
direction this was going, which was pretty much the same way that it went with the game against France.
Yeah, that's the one similarity just with this team is maybe I don't want to say slow starts because honestly, they didn't play well in the first really maybe 15 to 17 minutes of the game, but Latvia did also play amazing, right? There were a couple lapses by the Canadians, but at the same time, Zagar is it Zagars? Is that did I say that right? That the point
Yeah,
guard for Latvia just went ballistic in terms of amazing dishes and dimes, amazing shots. They were hitting really tough contested shots from three, and at the first maybe 5 to 10 minutes, it felt like they were just making every tough 3-pointer, and that just it's felt as though as the game prolonged, they just got worse and worse from three. And Canada's defense got better. They got more out in transition, especially a little bit at the second half. At the end of the second half, Shea got going in transition. RJ got a dunk, and then he got one at later at or I don't know if it was a layup to end the first half.
yeah,
So once they just got a couple little transition points and buckets, it really felt as though their offense came into gear. And
yeah.
once that was the case, their defense followed. And that's been interesting to see is that once the offense seems to get going, that their defense follows, or just that they are like Golden State in the NBA for so long that they just love third quarters. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is, but they just love after. And I wonder what Jordy does because I asked him and he gave me a non-answer and said, I just swore
Well,
at them essentially. But
let's
um, mhm.
take it from the other perspective, right? So in the press conference, Luca Bonci, the coach of the Latvian team, just straight out said Canada's a really tough team to stay with.
Yeah.
They're very powerful, very strong, very aggressive, very athletic, and they just didn't have the energy to play a whole game against Canada. They gave everything they had in that first half, and they're just kind of worn down by the second half. I think they lost that adrenaline rush. They were a little bit gassed, and he just said the constant uptake. You have to be going at 100% nonstop to stay with the Canadian team. That's kind of cool to hear, and
Hmm.
very obviously complimentary to the Canadian team. But that's maybe what's happened with France as well. Is just these teams just kind of run out of gas trying to stay with Canada. Canada puts so much pressure on them, and they just can't. They just kind of they exhaust too much energy.
What's interesting is I just off that point for me is that I believe they put so much pressure on teams on both ends, right? You have
Yep.
Dylan Brooks who puts so much pressure on you. Hopefully Lou Dort's back. It seems as though he's out for precautionary reasons, I believe, with a back injury. But just right, like even in the fourth quarter when the game went from okay, it's 10, getting can the Latvians kind of stay close like they did with France and they came back, being down 10, 12 points in the fourth quarter. Dylan Brooks had 3 steals from my count. At least maybe he had 2 official steals and a deflection, right? And he was in foul trouble the whole game. And that's just a sign of even when the shots aren't falling or just like it just how do you get past a guy like Lou Dort, Shea Gilgis Alexander's really good at stripping the ball. They just put a lot of pressure on the ball. Melvin Edgham's a really good defender. I really
Mhm.
like the rotations Jordy's been putting out there. Without really a Trey Bell Haynes, even a Kyle
Yeah.
Alexander. There was a lot of Kelly Olynyk at the 5 too, which I think is really interesting. I think that might be their best lineup in FIBA.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, they don't really have short guards. They like their wings
Yeah.
are all pretty tall, so you can
Yeah.
still have collective rebounding. It's more if you play against an interior force, we were talking about it with just like a JV or a Jaron
Yeah.
Jackson or that type of player.
Not
But
many though, right? There's
no,
just
there's
there's
not.
not many in the tournament.
Like even Spain with Willie Hernan Gomez and the Hernan Gomez brothers, Garuba, but those guys aren't
Mhm.
big, tall. They're not, they're good players. They're not.
Yeah.
just incredible. Like it's, I think about like Embiid or Jokic or those types of
Mhm,
players.
mhm.
If they were in the tournament, oh, maybe that would be a real worry. I don't really
Yeah,
want Olynyk guarding those guys,
yeah.
but
Yeah. If there's one thing to criticize with the team so far, it's like it really is short on rim protection. You kind of feel if anybody gets to the
mhm.
hoop, pretty uncontested layup there. Kelly did get one block at the hoop today, but just kind of get that feeling with these guys. That's the only thing that seems to be pretty glaring about what we're
Yeah.
missing here.
And but you first have to get the ball to the rim,
Yeah,
right? And that's
that's right.
that's that's what's they've just been so good at, especially in that second half. And um I think the crowd was just phenomenal. I want to talk about them just quickly because the first 10 minutes it just felt like we had just like we're just hit by a rocket of just energy or something. It just was ridiculous. They were screaming, yelling, shouting. It was it felt like a playoff game really. I think Shay said that or Kelly said that, I'm not sure. But they all talked about how it felt like they're on a road, like in a road environment, and they were essentially.
Yeah,
And they haven't really played that in a couple weeks now, right? I guess their last one was Spain. Germany felt like a road environment, but normally when you get to these international competitions, you're essentially at in a neutral venue, and so maybe that was something that they had to get used to. But
yeah,
um, the Latvians, give them credit, they played phenomenal, as you mentioned, that first
yeah.
half, especially the first maybe 15, 20, 17 minutes. And Zagar's, that guy, if he can put it all together, that guy has so much talent, can shoot, pass. Just I mean, he is undersized, which is probably the knock on him, and just as a defender in the
Yeah,
NBA. But man, he is skillful and was really fun to watch.
yeah. Um, yeah, it was he was fun to watch, but he somebody pointed out to me, he gassed out in that second half. I don't think he scored a point in the second half, right? So, but he was a high level prospect.
Mhm.
A few
Yeah.
years ago, and I think he went through some injury issues. He played in Spain for a couple of years. Didn't do too well. I think he was mired with a bunch of injuries, and then currently he's playing in a kind of a middling club in Lithuania, which is not that much of a league, right? So
Mhm.
there's talent everywhere, right? Some of these guys can really step up when they need to, and he had a really impressive first half. All those guys, and you look at think about Latvia too. We were just talking about um, Bertrand's not the best player on that team by far. Like
No.
he wasn't starting. Not that
Did he start
noticeable. I think he
today?
was one.
Did he
He
start
didn't
today?
start today.
He didn't
No,
start
he had
today.
more time because
Yeah.
Smits got into foul
Yeah.
trouble pretty.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
But he was one. I think 1 for 7 from the field or something like that. And
Mhm.
and
He
you
missed
just
a
tell,
bunch of
like,
open shots.
yeah, he's in the NBA because of his size and he has an elite skill set, right? But
And
as an all around player, there's other guys on this team that seem better than him, right?
yeah, and I don't think he's going to be in the NBA too much longer. He signed I think it was a 5-year contract with the Washington Wizards.
Yeah,
I think it was 5, but it was about 90 million. I remember that, and it's just an
yeah,
albatross contract. And if he didn't have that contract, I don't think he'd be in the NBA, right? So
yeah,
him as an NBA player is probably different than any of the
that
NBA
makes sense.
players on this team right now for Canada.
Yeah.
But what do you make of Shea just coming out the way he did in that third quarter?
Um, I don't know, man. Like what we saw with him, you talk a little bit about the Latvian crowd, it fired up the Canadian guys as well. Shea was getting into it with him. RJ was getting into it with the crowd. They were yelling and talking back to the crowd. So we kind of joked a little bit with Nikhil at the presser of kind of what did he tell Shea and
Mhm.
to kick his ass and get it in gear. But these guys talk about it. Jordy mentioned it too. They go through it and at the half, and you kind of adjust and come out fired up. And um, yeah, it's just he does seem to have this kind of fifth gear that he can turn on when he needs to. And you just felt like he was just could find himself clean looks whenever he wants, and those shots are going to drop, right? So just kind of there were some times there I'm just like this guy's a wizard. He's just a marvel to watch with just the footwork and how he creates space for himself and gives them just a kind of clean look over and over and over again.
Yeah, no, I just they just to have someone of his quality and just to have him just basically take over games for Canada really makes me feel as though, and I've said this before, that they can beat the US, right? Because I don't see anyone on the US that has that quality that I think Canada can hang with them for 46 minutes. And then in the last two, who do you have? Shea and they don't, right? I mean, they have a lot of really talented players, of course.
They got some
Um,
flares.
they have some really good players, but I don't really think anyone of that quality. I thought Kelly Olynyk really was the player that I know Shea maybe was the guy that put them over the hump in terms of winning the game. I thought if Kelly Olynyk doesn't play the way he did in that first quarter, first half, sorry, and even in the second half as well, he had a couple big shots and just was. I just felt he always makes the bucket when you need one, right?
Yeah.
That's what I really noticed is they were I think down I want to say 12 or 9 in the second quarter. He makes a big three. He makes another like kind of put back. He was just really, really good in this game, especially in when Canada needed it. And it's weird because that was really what it felt like in the France game. Those two games, albeit without maybe the crowd being the same, although the crowd in the France game was really great, but more neutral. It was just more loud.
Yeah.
Um, just the fact that Kelly kind of keeps this team in the games, and maybe that's because he's more the leader of this team more than maybe Shea in a lot of ways, in terms of knowing and understanding because he's played so many FIBA games. Hey, I need to step up right now and produce a little bit just so we kind of get over the hump to just get to like Shea and RJ for those guys to maybe find their shooting touch, which it seems as though at the start of games that they don't really seem to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably worth touching on too. Maybe a couple unsung heroes of the day too. And we're touched on this a little bit. Kind of wondering who was going to step into Lou Dort's minutes here. It seems like that went to Phil Scrubb,
Yeah.
and maybe a little bit more minutes to Melvin Ejim. And Melvin 0 points tonight. Didn't take a shot, but 7 rebounds, 2 of them offensive. A couple steals, couple assists, 3 steals, couple assists. He just fills in the holes all over the place. He's working his ass off. You don't feel that things are kind of lacking with him out there. He's not that kind of offensive force, but he can chip in here or there. But he's kind of all over loose balls. He's the only guy who seems has a shot at collecting missed free throws. He's really quick and all over those. And then Phil had a great game as well. Just did what he needed to do and knocked down open shots and looked like he was kind of fitting in right out there as well. So it's just kind of good to see those guys step into those roles.
No, obviously as a Carleton alum, and watching Phil scrub for a long time, it's really cool to see him play. I find it interesting that they played him really over Trey Bell Haynes. But I do believe that makes more sense just because they're now playing much shorter rotations and they don't really need a guard,
Yeah,
a point guard when they have a combination of Nikhil, Olynyk, RJ, Shea on the court at all times. It doesn't really, they don't need that. And I
yeah,
mean, I like Trey, but he's, a bit of a, I wouldn't say defensive liability, but he's not the same type of defender that
yeah,
even Phil Scrubb is, or that Melvin Ejim is, who is a very good defender. So
yeah,
it's interesting to see that Jordy's really seems to be prioritizing defense. And
yeah,
I do like that because at the end of the day, at this level, Canada should be able to score, and they've definitely shown that they have what it takes. I think they're averaging, what was it? Someone said, I think 108 a game, which is just remarkable considering they didn't,
Yeah,
other than Lebanon, they haven't played just any spring
tough game.
chickens. They've had
Yeah,
tough games, right? So I really find it interesting just that the fact that Jordy seems to be going away from really what he did in the pre-tournament games, where it was a lot of
yeah,
five-man bench units. And I think
yeah,
that's a marker of a good coach, because why is he showing his hand?
yeah.
Why is he not really just going all out now? And you don't want the wear and tear on the guys as well. So I think Jordy Fernandez deserves a ton of credit for how this team's been playing, because it was not an easy job to get all these NBA guys to buy in, to be in the right roles. Nikhil talked about how a lot of the players have kind of dumbed down their roles compared to the NBA on this team. And I thought that was a really apt comment by him, just because it does seem as though everyone's really bought in.
Yeah. It seems yeah, he's definitely moved to Nikhil as the back as kind of the backup ball handler if Shea's ever at the floor, right? So they're out there together for a bunch of stretches, but when Shea needs to take a break, so Shea played 31 minutes 33 seconds today. So it's kind of in Nikhil's hands after that. And Nikhil actually led the team in minutes today. 31 minutes 41 seconds. So
Yeah, just a
that
bit
was
over.
he doing a good game.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Nikhil, I think he had his ups and downs today. He had a lot of turnovers where he just kind of lost the ball in the scrum, and just in kind
Yeah.
of but overall I thought he's been really good. What he brings that Brooks doesn't is he wasn't great defensively today, I would say, but he's a better shooter, but he can also shoot off the dribble a little bit and create a little bit of shots. And when I thought in the first quarter they were going a bit too much to Brooks ISO, and he made one nice pass to RJ for an open three, but they were kind of the offense was really slowing down with him because he isn't a great connector, and Nikhil's much more of that and a creator. So I thought Nikhil played really, really well. This team really feels pretty formidable. Like Scott, you've been like caring about this team for so long, and so invested. Like, what does it feel like now? I'm sure you felt that after the France game, but now where it's like, man, could this team win the gold medal?
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird being kind of up there amongst the favorites. It's weird seeing a coach of an opposing team complaining complaining of favoritism from the refs because of their NBA players, and they're looking at the names on their backs and not reffing the game. So
Yeah.
that seems weird. I could never imagine USA refs giving us favoritism or getting favoritism from any refs out there. So that feels different. But it just feels like, any game we should be in. There's enough weapons here. There's a superstar player here that you could rely on, who seems to show up, every single game at this point. Maybe it's only in the second half, but he's showing up every game. It does feel different at this point. We still got a long way to go. Maybe we want to touch on kind of where we're at and what's the next step and how do things look in other pools, and touch on
Yeah.
a few things like that.
Yeah, so obviously Canada won their group, but that doesn't really mean anything. I know we've talked about it on all my podcasts, but I'll just reiterate it quickly that Canada now is in group. I believe it's called, is it L or I? I forget what the letter is, but they're in the second round.
I think it's L.
It's L, yeah,
Yeah,
and they are
yeah.
going to be playing almost for assuredly. They will be playing the Spanish as well, probably Brazil. The winner of them
That's
versus,
undecided yet. Yeah,
yeah, the winner of Cote d'Ivoire versus Brazil tomorrow will make it to the second round, and then obviously Latvia, because they beat the French. The French are out, and the Latvians are in this second round. So basically, the goal for Canada is to make the quarters out of this second round, and Canada will play the top two teams in Group G. That is Spain and the winner of Cote d'Ivoire and Brazil. And basically the way it works is it's not just how Canada did against the three teams that are remaining, it's their total wins and losses. So it's essentially their kind of how they did in the 5 games, right? And so if there is a tie break, it goes to firstly. So let's say Canada loses to Brazil and beats Spain, right? Uh, Canada and Spain will both be 4-1. Um, and the tiebreaker would be whoever won the game. But let's say the same thing happened, but Brazil um, wins both their games versus Latvia. Spain beats Latvia as well, and Canada is 4-1. Brazil's 4-1. Spain's 4-1. Then it will go to point differential, and I actually checked this out with Blake Murphy. He said it's just total point differential. It's not actually between the teams. So because Canada has blown out everyone, they're in such a prime position right now to make the second round. Essentially, if they win one of the 2 games in the second round, they're making it to the quarters because of their point differential. The problem is that you still probably don't want to play Germany, who probably we'll see what happens in the second round, but is most likely to be the number 1 seed. Franz Wagner, from not my reporting, but what I've heard from other journalists, seems as though he's out until the quarters. But that Germany team beat Australia without him. Australia's a really good team. They won bronze at the Olympics, came fourth last time at the FIBA World Cup. So this team's really in it to try to win every game. Their mantra is that they have to win. They have 8 game 7s, I think is what Jordi Fernandez said, meaning that they have to win 8 games in a row to win the tournament. And they treat each game as a game 7. So the goal obviously is to beat Brazil and or Brazil or Cote d'Ivoire and Spain, and then make it as the number 1 seed in this little group. And if they were to essentially, if they were to lose both games, they'd probably be out, and then it would be unlikely that they'd make the Olympics. And you can maybe touch upon the Olympic stuff if you want.
Yeah, that's still nothing settled there. We still have a lot of competition with Dominican Republic winning, going 3-0 in their pool, so they're advancing to the second round. Probably Brazil, right? At least Brazil, it comes into our pool, so we have some control over that destiny, which is nice to have. I think the big thing, I'd love to have some control over Dominican Republic, to be honest, but we don't, and they can kind of slide on through based on a bit of an easier draw. And there's also a solid chance Puerto Rico, who is sitting at 1-1 right now, could end up moving forward as well. Puerto Rico would end up in the same pool as Dominican Republic, so there's kind of a little bit of a negation there. They'll be with Serbia and most likely and Italy. Not most likely, definitely Italy. And then of course you have the United States as well. So there's still a lot. There's still 5 America's teams alive, fighting for 2 positions. This we're going to have to advance to the quarterfinals. I think Dominican Republic has a really good shot at getting to the quarterfinals. And then we'll see what happens from there. We would just got to keep advancing and keep advancing.
Yeah, I believe that the Dominican will make the quarters, and same with Canada. And I know before, when we did our preview, I said if Canada makes the quarters, then that's the way they'll make the Olympics. I will change that to they'll make the quarters and probably have to win that, or if they lose, and I'd imagine the Dominican probably don't make it deeper than the quarters, but if they are to beat Serbia, there's a decent chance they play Lithuania or Montenegro, which I think would be a very much of a toss-up just to make the semis, which would just be a killer draw for Canada, who I believe I think definitely has a really tough quarterfinal no matter what, but you could argue will be favored in both just the way they've been playing. But if the Dominican does lose to Serbia in the next round, they would probably have to play the United States in the quarterfinals, and that I feel pretty confident about. Especially the way the Dominicans have been really eking out these wins. They've won they won all 3 games by, I believe their point differentials was like 15. Oh no, it might have been more close to 18 or 19, but
They're
just not
19.
19. So
Yeah.
not big margin of error. That's basically 6 points a game, give or take, margin of victory. So this team is maybe not as strong as the teams Canada's playing against, but their draw is much easier. So we have to be mindful of that. And every time you see the Dominican, in my opinion, that's the only real team that can challenge Canada.
Yeah.
And if you're watching those games, just cheer against them. And as much as I don't like Cat right now, you shouldn't either.
Yeah. Exactly. This is a good way to put it. Nice. Anything else? I know you kind of threw out there on Twitter for any if there was any questions out there. Did
Yeah,
you pick
no,
any?
I'll get to a couple.
I
So
I
the
know
first.
I got one, but
Okay, go with yours.
we had somebody ask of, I know some people are always fixed on kind of ranking points, and
Mhm.
will we go up in the rankings here? Yes, clearly, the World Cup is the highest weighted tournament, even
More
more
than the
so than the
Olympics.
Olympics. Yeah, more than Olympics. I think just to give some reference, a FIBA Americas game has a 0.8 weighting, so 80%. Olympics has a 2x weighting, and the World Cup has a 2.5 weighting. So every game here gives kind of added points.
Great insight.
Every stage, as we advance on the stage, they get higher and higher weighted. So wins in the second round and in the playoffs help a lot. Big blowout wins here. You get extra points for beating teams by 10 or 20 or even 30 points. So there will be a solid jump just from what Canada has done so far. But we're far from being finished here, and let's keep pushing. That I don't think that's the biggest concern at this moment, but yes.
Yeah, no, we were actually talking about it a little bit because I asked you just, well, how high could they maybe get, and what the implications would be. And basically they're right now they're 15th in the world. Until you get to basic to 8th in the world, there's not a huge difference. But at the same time, the closer you are to 8th, because is it a 7 year, is it every 7 years or 8 years?
It
Is
is. It's a time scale weighting, but those kind of once you get into that, I think it drops off at year 8. But year 6 and 7
so
have a pretty small weighting.
yeah, so the point of it is just that the better you do, the more weight you have going forward, right? Compared to when Canada was like missing the Olympics and not doing well at the FIBA World Cup. So obviously over time it actually should improve Canada's ranking if Canada continues to bring NBA talent and do decently well in these tournaments, or goes to the Olympics as well. So I wouldn't be too worried about it. And if Canada is to go deep and maybe make the semis or finals, there's a decent chance they'll be top 10 in the world. And we'll definitely enjoy much better draws where Wit and I don't worry about Australia and Lithuania or Latvia and France, and it's or hopefully we get a bit more of a break than Canada has, just because they haven't done well on the international stage, and truthfully they didn't deserve to be like one of the higher ranked teams.
Yeah. And people need to understand too that this tougher pool we're in is not necessarily because of our ranking.
Mm-hmm.
We're better ranked than Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico and teams like that. It's a lot of this had to do with the Philippines requesting the United States, and the Philippines getting a 1 seed, and Canada being requested by Indonesia, and it just kind of got things a little bit wonky, and kind of balanced the deck against us a little bit.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'll go to our next listener question. I think this we'll have this one and then one more, and then we'll probably wrap it up. As just for people that don't know, Scott is going back home. because X.com needs them. So we will just go to this question. What was there anything about this game that made you guys more nervous about Canada's chances in the next game, next rounds, or was it what you expected?
Oh, you want to answer that one first?
Sure. I honestly, if Canada had won that game or lost that game the way it was headed, maybe the first 15, 17 minutes, yeah, I'd feel very different. But if anything, I feel more confident that they just turned on the afterburners and figured it out. And that's one thing this team's really done well, I think, is that sure, you can be more talented than the other team or play better. When you're playing your best basketball, you're way better than everyone else. But it's how do you play when everything's going wrong and you have that level of adversity, right? And your back's against the wall. And I thought that first 15 minutes was the biggest gut punch they've had maybe since the Germany game, their first Germany game. And they really figured it out. And their talent and cream, as you say, cream rose to the top. And I won't glean too much from it. For me, the next step or the next game that I think you can really get a lot out of is how they do against Spain. If they
Yeah.
are to beat Spain in a very commanding fashion, I believe they're gold medal contenders if that's the case.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I kind of echo your comments, but if we're looking for holes, there's two things to me. One is the health of Ludort. Like I don't know if I was expecting him to be out this game as well.
Right.
So that's a concern. We were a little bit short on depth to begin with, and he brings something serious to the table. So it'd be nice to get him back as soon as possible. And frankly, I'm still just kind of a little nervous. Are we going to run into some teams that kind of can brutalize our lack of front court depth, right?
Mhm.
So in a game like this, really Kyle Alexander and Zach got no run whatsoever until some garbage time minutes at the end. So there was a lot of time they were running either Kelly or Dwight as the kind of the sole big out there. I'm not super confident in Dwight and what he kind of brings to the table is very different from what Kelly does. So I'm kind of going like, man, if Kelly ever gets in serious foul trouble, that could be a real problem. You kind of see how he's such a linchpin out there, and just kind of keeps everything moving. And like I said, like you pointed out, it's just he's such a nice release valve when things aren't
Mhm.
going well. He seems to kind of find a way and get something going. So I'm still a little nervous if we run into kind of a real true big or two that kind of smash us around a little bit, and how we're going to react to that.
Yeah. The thing is that there's not a lot of those big guys in this tournament, right?
Right.
Um, I off the top of my head, there's Jonas Valanciunas. I believe he'd be a really bad matchup for Canada. Now, maybe
Yeah.
Canada would take advantage of him on the perimeter and just his maybe
Yeah.
lack of mobility as a defender. But just in terms of how does Dwight Powell defend him? How does Kelly Olynyk defend him? It'd be really tough, especially in a FIBA setting. Um, but what we already mentioned is there's not a lot of dominant centers or even guys that are just going to get your 20 and 15 and put a lot of pressure on your defense to be good at like rim protection and just post defense and interior defense. And because there's not that many of those guys, like even the US, right? Like Jaren Jackson is not
Yeah.
really a scorer inside. I mean, he can, but that's not really his foreplay, right? Or
I think the I think the Germans still make me nervous as kind of a collective. Maybe that's
they're
kind of one
big.
that's thinking in the back of
I
my head.
I talked to Vivek and I've talked to you about it. They're my biggest fear because they have a lot of size, they have a lot of length, they can defend, they can shoot. They have Schroeder who can get downhill, who If
Yeah.
you think Zagars is a problem, Dennis Schroeder is a bit, even more of a problem in terms of just getting to where he wants to go, especially in FIBA, the way he's been playing. So that's my biggest worry. For me, the Germans really match up well against the Canadians. That is, I think Canada got lucky to win that second game. Schroeder fouled out and they were down like maybe 6-7 points, and it really turned the tide of that game. So if you're a Canadian fan, you probably cheer for Germany in a way if Canada is to beat Spain. But that's the one worry, is just because that team doesn't necessarily have a big that dominates, but they have Tice, they have Wagner, they have Bonga, they have uh, Franz Wagner, who's tall and
Yeah.
athletic. They just are really a kryptonite for Canada, and I just think are one of the best teams, if not outside the U.S. and Canada, maybe the best team in this
Yeah.
tournament.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So this is a fun question for Wit and I, because it's more about just how we've interacted with players and their demeanors and personalities. So the question is, you guys have gone to talk to and interact with players so much, they said, or a lot. Talk about their demeanor and personalities. Are they people who kind of assume, like, are they the way you assume they'd be, or have you seen a bit of a different side?
Yeah, it's I don't know. So you see some things like obviously we got some tape on Dylan kind of goofing around and having fun, and you kind of think that, and then the very next day he seemed very like closed down and didn't really want to engage
Didn't want
with
to talk to
us or
us today.
didn't
Yeah.
want to talk to us. So maybe that's what you expect out of somebody like Dylan, just a little bit more up and down day by day. Where somebody like Dwight Powell is kind of upbeat, articulate, professional, just kind of, what you would expect from somebody like him. But I don't think there's any like piercing of the veil here. I think these guys
No.
are all professional. They're used to the media. I think we live in a world where these guys don't really want to put down their guard because
Yes.
something can go viral really quick. Everyone's got cameras in their face, everyone's got phones in their face, mics in their face. So I just feel that they are careful, and kind of have a guard up all the time, with us, and maybe see them joking around when they're together and stuff like that. But I don't know if I had preconceived expectations with them, but certainly they're not all chummy with the media and kind of wide open. It can be really day to day with these guys, but I think I'd be the same if I was in their position. Right?
Yeah. Well, I think I can tell just the rhythms of the game more so. So on a game day, they're way more serious, right?
Yeah,
Then on an off day, they're a bit, for example, Dylan Brooks yesterday was asking questions to Shea during his press availability. And then
yeah,
today was just not giving us an answer. I'm not saying he was rude to us, but he just did not seem like he wanted to be there, which is fair
yeah.
enough. But just the contrast between that and yesterday was very stark to me. And I don't know about you.
Oh yeah, we talked
And
about it.
and so it's as well. I'd say a little nugget is that the NBA players tend to be much, or at least maybe the Canadian NBA players tend to be much more guarded than the Europeans, right?
Yeah,
Or players just not playing in the NBA. For example,
yeah,
I talked to Bruno Caboclo. Hopefully that podcast comes out in the next day or two. Um, and he was very open. He was very, I mean, it's obviously there's a bit of a language difference. He speaks English, but it's not as natural to him.
yeah,
But he just seemed very warm and welcome and sincere, and wasn't trying to say a political or like a um just a he it felt very sincere and not media trained, right?
yeah. That
um
that that's what I was going to point out. These guys just seem really media trained.
yeah.
This isn't
I've had
amateur.
guys, and I'm not going to call anyone out, but I've had where I ask a question and they basically answer it before I finished it with all the cliches. And you understand why they do it. And there is gotcha journalism. I don't think
Yeah.
anyone here is doing that. And also just with the way social media is, it goes out, it's out of context, or
Yeah.
maybe they're
Out of
just having a
control.
bad day and it looks bad, and it's not necessarily an indictment on who they are, or anything otherwise. So it's been really interesting. That's what I'd take away, is as much as it is, oh, are they different, are they the same as you expected them on TV? For me, it's more just, wow, okay, this is what they're like. They're a bit more serious. They're a bit more guarded, the NBA guys. And then some guys, we talked to Davis Bertans, and he was amazing, eh?
Yeah.
He was just phenomenal, gave great insight, talked about his brother playing in Europe, and
Yeah.
there was this big brawl, and his
Yeah.
thoughts on the 12-man roster. And it
Yeah.
was all in English. It wasn't in a secondary
Yeah.
language. Sometimes is the way players feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
So
Laughing, having a good time with the reporters,
you see
just
it with the Latvian
much more
reporters,
engaging.
with the Latvian players and reporters, they're just all dapping each other up. They clearly have had these long-standing relationships. And truthfully, with us, obviously, I don't have any relationships with the players. I'm trying to build some, and we'll see. Arash does a little bit, but even then, they're not maybe as close as, for example, an NBA team and NBA writers, where you're seeing the guys
Yeah.
week in and day out. Right. With us, there's a bit less of that. And because just the
Yeah.
way the media is in this country and the team, there's not a set of media that covers the team
Yeah.
consistently, like in Latvia or France. So that's also makes it harder for them to I don't behoove or blame any player for being like, well, this guy, why am I talking to him, or why would I give him anything, because they don't know me, right?
Yeah. Right.
To me, I'm just some white tall guy, like, who's at the press conferences, right? And me and you, Scott, just the two tall guys.
Yeah. And then
um
the other guy in a beard with a stupid shirt, right?
yeah, exactly. Well, an
Yeah,
interesting shirt for them, but yeah, it's just very different, and it's been awesome. And is there one thing that maybe a moment for you that you will probably remember from this tournament, as this is your last day here in Jakarta?
Um, no, I think, in retrospect, my first day, I just kind of like rolled in when we talk about stupid shirts. That one, Dylan Brooks villain shirt. It looking back at it now, it kind of pierced that veil that we're just talking about here, right? These
Hmm.
these guys have a little bit of a guard up and this kind of stone face, and it got Dwight laughing and smiling and grabbing Lou and pointing it out. You know, Dylan saw it, recognized it, and nice shirt, buddy, and kind of slaps my chest. And in the presser, Shea looks over and just starts cracking a smile as soon as he recognized it and got distracted when he was being asked a
Did you
question.
did,
So
did you
at
notice
the
that he
time, I was just sorry. Go ahead.
no I was just gonna say, did you notice that he cracked a smile when you said X.com today? Did you notice that?
I
He
didn't. I
did.
didn't
Yeah,
notice.
he kind of winced and laughed a little bit. Not maybe as much as those two times, but he did. So
Yeah.
he kind of, yeah.
Um, well, the point on that, like I said, that was first day I rolled in doing a few dumb things like that. But the next couple of days, you didn't really see any of that, right? These guys are just kind of like I said, stone faced and focused, or just they have their wall up or whatever. So it's kind of cool just to kind of be able to do that and see that. Yeah, that's probably. Or the other one was when we had Shea after one of the practices, and Dylan kind of just casually moseys in and pretends he's a reporter and starts cracking jokes and stuff like that. So it's just good to see him kind of laughing and joking around, having fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, for me, it's been surreal. Less with the Canadian players, but just my two experiences with like the more one-on-one type stuff, which is I personally, just in my own journalism podcast, I really love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And just to have a sit down with Sergio Scariolo, who's like Like, I think about how I'm not nearly an X's and O's person compared to you, compared to Jonathan Chen, to Blake Murphy, to all those other guys. And I have a sit down with like the guy who's like one of the, I don't know what, 10 or 15 smartest
Greatest.
basketball minds, one of the like maybe the smartest like European basketball mind
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
And to have 30 minutes of his time and pick his brain and is just, I'm always going to remember that. And he was really nice. And um so those are the things that I'm going to really remember, and hopefully a couple more things. I also notice how Jordy is very guarded as well.
yeah.
And rightfully so. I understand it. He has a really good thing going and doesn't want anything to ruin it. But that's one thing I've noticed, and maybe they take it from their coach as well, right? He'll find little times where he'll joke. He made a weird Alanis Morissette
Yeah,
reference
that was
today,
that
which
was a weird one.
I did not understand it. I don't know her as well, even though she's an Ottawa uh, girl where I'm from. But he will throw in jokes, um, but then he'll also be very stern and very just very serious. So it's
Yeah.
again, but it's also people. Like, are you always happy and and jokey, or like joking around every day? There's very
Yeah.
few of us that are like that. Or are you always sad and mullen and just somber? No, it's some days you're more of this and that. So you have to give
Yeah.
a break to the guys. And yeah. Well, Scott, I think we're gonna wrap this up, and I'm really sad because this is my last day with you, and it was great having the whole tournament together, um, at least so far, and that France game with you in the press conference, I'll always remember with the shirt and just that whole feeling of just oh my God, we just won this incredible game, and yeah, so thanks so much for doing this, because if people don't know, I'll give a little tidbit, because Scott's actually the reason why I'm here. Um, not because he put a gun to my head to come with him, but because about when I think it was when the squad was announced, right? Or the
Yeah.
14 or
Yeah.
15 or whatever. Scott posted on Twitter, and we've exchanged for a long time now on Twitter, or X. Sorry, I didn't want to piss off your
Get it right.
bosses. Don't want to piss off your bosses.
Yeah.
But he just said, oh, it's not too bad to get to Jakarta, money wise, obviously expensive, but not as bad as you would think. And I said, well, oh man, he knows I love the Canadian men's basketball team program. Oh man, I'd love to do it. And he said, well, hey, why don't you just apply to media? And Mike Bartlett, you reached out on my behalf. Long story short is nothing really came from Mike Bartlett, although he's great, and he's been really cool to interact with, just both of us here in Jakarta. But
Has
um,
been.
has been, yeah. And
Yeah.
and but FIBA said yes to me, and within maybe a week or two, I think it was about 2 weeks after you
Yeah.
suggested it, or maybe closer to 10 days. Anyways, they said yes, and that's why I'm here. And so I am forever grateful to you, Scott. You've changed my life, even though you didn't mean to. You have, and so I am always forever thankful. And I'm really happy just for you that this program, and obviously fingers crossed, is finally turning the direction that me, you, and so many others have wanted to for a long time. And
Yeah.
we'll see how far they go. I don't think that this is their last win of the World Cup, but hopefully this is 3 out of the 8 that Jordy Fernandez keeps talking about. But thanks so much, Scott, for this, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate the kind words. And there's a lesson out there for all our little kid listeners. I try to tell my daughters this sometimes. Listen, if you're not going to ask for something, you'll never get it. What's the worst that can happen? They say no, right?
Yeah.
So you asked, I asked, and we both got the media passes and everything that kind of came with it. So it's been kind of an adventure of a lifetime. I've had a great time here with you. Awesome getting to know you better, and wish I could stay a little bit longer, but
Yeah.
I do have a job and a family to get back to, and it's back to watching these games on TV for me.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe get you out to Paris. Maybe you can convince your wife to. It's not a bad place to go. And just to add on Scott's point, I completely agree. And I don't want to say that I'm like this big wig, but people ask me sometimes just how do you do it? And I say, well, I always send emails to everyone, every journalist, player. Like if I think, oh, I want to have them on my show when behind the play, I always do it. Or I just want to get to know someone and I DM them or say hi, nice to meet you. Obviously now with this and applying, I've always just done it, and I've got more no's than I've got yeses, but um I've got a lot of yeses as well, right? And the more yeses you get, the more times you put yourself out there, and you get one yes, it's almost it tends to build off itself. Sorry. It's almost like laying the bricks down. Once you get one, you can do the second, third, etc. And then you have a foundation. So if you're anyone out there, whether it be in journalism or whatever the case may be, just try, and if you don't succeed, you'll have no regrets, but you will never know if you could have done it or had that opportunity if you didn't try. So I think that's a lesson anyone can learn. And also just that you need to follow Scott Witter on Twitter and reply to all his posts, because that's what helped me
Right?
in this case. Yeah,
Yeah. One
exactly.
more cliche to end this. It's always better to regret the things you did than regret the things you never tried.
There you go.
Right?
There you go. Thanks so much, Scott, and have a safe flight back. And hopefully, by the time you get to LA, Canada's officially through to the quarterfinals in some form and manner.
Yeah, buddy. All right. Peace out.